All right, today we're diving into a really powerful policy tool that's completely reshaping India's manufacturing landscape. It's a fascinating story, It's about massive ambition, huge risks, and this quest for a whole new global reputation. So let's get right into it.
This single sentence, it's not just some catchy phrase from an economic report. No, this is the core ambition. This is what's driving this huge strategic shift in India's industrial policy. It's all about moving beyond being just another option to becoming the obvious choice, purely based on quality and reliability. For decades, for as long as I can remember, the whole conversation around Indian manufacturing was about one thing: cost. How cheap can we make it? But this new strategy, it's about something so much bigger. We're not just talking about making more stuff. We're talking about fundamentally changing how the world sees Indian manufacturing, moving from just a low-cost producer to a high-quality, can't-live-without-it partner.
So the end game here is this idea they call strategic indispensability. And what does that really mean? It means moving from being, just one of many options on the global stage to becoming absolutely essential. A partner you just can't ignore. A node in the system so critical that trying to bypass it would be like, trying to build a car without an engine. It just wouldn't work.
Now, a transformation like this, it doesn't just happen overnight. The whole strategy follows this pretty clear three-stage evolution. You start defensively, right, with import substitution to build up a domestic base. Then you move on to strategic resilience, which is all about being able to handle global shocks. And then finally, you go on the offense, aiming for that ultimate goal of strategic indispensability.
So, how do you actually make a massive leap like that? Well, the government has picked its weapon of choice to drive this change, the Quality Control Order, or as we'll call it, the QCO. And this is where the policy gets very real, very fast.
Okay, so a QCO is basically a rule. It says that if you want to sell a certain product in India, doesn't matter if you make it here or import it, it has to meet specific quality standards. And this has a really powerful 1-2 punch. First, it blocks a flood of low-quality junk from the market. And second, it forces domestic producers to seriously level up their own game.
And look, this is not some minor policy tweak. The sheer speed and scale of this rollout is what's really incredible here. Just look at the chart. The number of products covered by these quality mandates is set to more than triple in just a few years. We're talking from 214 back in 2019 to a planned 723 by the end of 2025. That shows a very deliberate, very aggressive push towards a quality-first mindset.
This quote really just nails the shift in thinking. For India to become a real manufacturing powerhouse, that Made in India label has to be an undisputed mark of quality, just as much as it's a mark of a good price. The two have to go hand in hand. It's non-negotiable.
Okay, theory is great, but does this stuff actually work in the real world? Well, let's look at the toy industry. It's become the poster child for what happens when this policy mix of quality control and tariffs works exactly as planned. So, back in 2021, a quality control order was put in place for all toys sold in India. At the same time, they raised the import taxes. The goal was pretty simple: stop the flood of cheap, often unsafe toys, and give domestic manufacturers a fair shot to compete on quality. And the result? Wow, a truly dramatic surge in toy exports. We're talking about a 239% increase in just 8 years. That isn't just growth, my friends, that is an explosion. This is that moment that really shows the direct, massive impact this policy can have.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the complete turnaround. While exports were going through the roof, imports fell by more than half. But here's the kicker. India flipped from being a net importer of toys to a net exporter. It is a textbook case of how a targeted quality intervention can completely transform an entire industry.
But, like with any powerful tool, there's always a flip side. The Toy Story is a huge success, no doubt. But what happens when you try to apply that same logic to industries that are way more complex? Well, this is where the story gets a lot more nuanced.
So let's just ask the question straight up. Can a policy that works so well in one area actually create a bunch of problems in another? And according to the analysis, the answer is a definite yes. Okay, so you really have two different faces of these QCOs. When you apply them to finished goods, like toys, it's great. It protects consumers, builds the brand. But when you apply them to what we call intermediate inputs, the raw materials, the ingredients like special fibers or chemicals that other industries need, well, then it can act like a hidden tax. If you can't get those ingredients domestically, these QCOs can choke the supply chains, making it more expensive for Indian companies to produce their own stuff, and that really hurts their competitiveness on the world stage.
To really get why this is so tricky, let's think about this classic analogy. The economist Milton Friedman famously used a simple pencil to explain the unbelievable complexity of global supply chains. The wood, the graphite, the rubber, the paint, it all comes from different people in different places with different skills. So if you just slap a blanket quality rule on every single one of those inputs without thinking about whether you can even get them, the whole chain can just break.
And this isn't just some theory, okay? The government saw this exact problem happening in the real world. In late 2023, they had to roll back or postpone several of these quality orders on man-made fibers. Why? Because they were creating a huge bottleneck for the textile industry. This shows a really pragmatic, real-time adjustment to the policy. They're learning as they go.
So the challenge isn't really about whether QOs are good or bad. It's about how to use them smartly. And this has led to a push for a more disciplined framework, one that gets you all the benefits of quality control without accidentally creating these massive bottlenecks.
So what does a smarter approach actually look like? Well, for starters, you ask a really simple but critical question. Do we even have the domestic capacity before we issue a new rule? It also means building in flexibility, with exemptions for critical inputs needed for R&D or for very specialized exports. And it's not just about the rules, it's about support, giving smaller businesses longer transition periods to adapt and making a major investment in testing labs and digital certification to make it all smoother for everyone.
And that really brings us to our final thought. This journey towards strategic indispensability, it's not about just applying one policy everywhere. It's about using a powerful tool like the QCO with the precision of a surgeon, not the force of a sledgehammer. The goal is clear, the tool is potent, but the real question remains, can this kind of disciplined, thoughtful application truly transform a nation's global reputation from the ground up? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.